So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the third talk of the Digital Food 2021 series. And to begin, let me also wish you a happy Chinese New Year. So you can see I'm wearing Chinese. This is the 5th day of the Chinese New Year. So officially the New Year lasts about 7 days. Well, 7 days precisely. So we're still in the New Year's period. And this is the year of the ox, known for its hardworking work ethic. And today we're talking about farmers. So I think it's very fitted. And also wish we have a bullish year for the coming 2021. My name is Tiffany Tsui. I'm the co-organizer and moderator of Digital Food 2021 series. I'm a researcher, advisor, but as well as founder and investor. I focus on sustainability, technology, and transformation and bridging East with West. Dear Dick Veerman here, together we developed the concept of Digital Food series to focus on the theme of connect. So connecting data, technology, and strategy, and connecting people, ideas, and regions. To start, I would like to thank our sponsors, ktba, InfoSupport, SyncForce, City of Rotterdam, Province Zuid-Holland, Greenport West-Holland, and Leiden, Delft, Erasmus University, and Wageningen University. So today we're at the third installment, let's say, of our Digital Food series. We have already two in the past month. In our very first launch talk, we had a panel discussion together with MOBA, Global Gap, and SyncForce to discuss what it will mean of digital transformation to the roles of chain players, what it will mean to the development of standards, industry standards, and also harmonization and certifications around the world. In our second installment, we went into deeper to the topic of SyncForce with CEO Hans de Heer to discuss where machines can autonomously talk to each other and exchange data to enable the immutable data transfer from farm to fork. It was a more of a technical discussion, which we structured as a masterclass format. We're going to one topic more in detail. So as we go along this Digital Food series, we're also experimenting and learning to how do we best engage our audience and to also build a format that we can eventually to have a vibrant global community. So actually today, it's only in our third talk. We have already quite a good representation from all different countries, and later we'll see that. So today's talk will be led by Marjan Smit. She is the founder of ImpactBuying, and she's also former CEO of Sim Supply, which is a company specialized in track and trace of the entire supply chain, bridging producer with retailers. Today, Marjan will talk about and give us an introduction about TrueCode. It's a unique and immutable identifier of any place in the food chain. And it's also envisioned to be cheap. It's a free global digital passport for every farmer and every facility that produces, handles, and processes food. So today's format will be a small presentation, short presentation, about 15 minutes. And then we will try to, in this session, to engage as much as possible for debates and discussions. So we have invited our audience. It was not announced in our program, but we have announced our three distinguished experts in their field to give response. And these three people I already introduced now, who are in our audience already. There's Christian Muller. He spoke already in our launch talk, and he's the president of Global Gap. And Rudy Hagendorn, he's the director of end-to-end value chain and standards at Consumer Goods Forum. And he will also respond from the perspective of consumer buying power. And lastly, we'll also ask Ikechi Agbupa. He's a professor at the River University from Nigeria, because we focus a lot about smallholder farmers. So it's valuable to have feedback from Africa. So before we move on, I would like to always start with a understanding of our audience. Bianca, who's our master for the session, can you please show us the poll questions, the first two?
Sorry, I have some difficulties with the polls. I can't load them. So
okay,
I will propose to continue with the program, and then I'll inform you when they are back.
Yes. So when Bianca's working on the poll questions, I like to have a chat with Marjan about our past. Actually, we just met for this session, but actually our path already crossed a while ago in China. Correct. In the period of year 2000, when I was the founder of a company in China, bringing in also certification for sustainable buildings. I was based in Beijing and Shanghai then. I understand that at that moment, you were also been traveling in China for auditing. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of working in China at that moment with rapid changes, but also as, try to implement certification auditing process? How is that? How are those experiences for you?
Well, I think for somebody coming from Holland, it was the change was even bigger than it was for you because you lived in that area. So, and so you almost can imagine how it must be for a European that comes in. It was 1999, and we stayed there, I think, for 3 or 4 years. The changes, we were in Beijing, and every time that we visited, every 3 months, the city changed, especially in Shanghai. The changes were even bigger. And what I learned from very close by, that if you give consumers the freedom to be themselves, to create an own identity, they will do so. And when I started in 1999, when we set up our first certification body there, the majority of the people in Beijing themselves were still wearing Mao uniforms. And in the years that I mean, there were more colors, there were more individuals, the smartphone was coming up. But it was for a professional that has an auditing background and setting up an audit organization over there. And Jacob Silsa is also on this call. He remembers those stories because he was responsible for the auditing in Holland. Is that the complete different approach of China saying, if I pay you to do an audit, then you give me a good result, even though the results were bad. So that was a big change. And of course, the experience in the different production sites where you have to know, Tiffany, our focus was very much on quality and food safety, building a bridge between the Chinese factories and the requirements of the European retailers. So that was in our scope, but social compliance, human rights, you could really see that there was a big difference in, for example, child labor or the conditions, the dormitories for the workers. I mean, you come in with the European standard of living, and then you are confronted with that. Child labor was quite normal in that phase. It was still common. And also already there, when I started to discuss about that, which was very sensitive, they said, okay, if customers really want us to work only with grown-ups, they just have to tell us and be willing to pay a little bit more because grown-ups cost more than children. Yeah, so it was, I think I couldn't have done the work that I'm doing now and the topic I'm talking about with the group today if I wasn't, if I hadn't been in China, because it was changing my perspective of many things. And I became very aware on how lucky I am and how Dutch I am.
Because the experience of seeing things on the ground, I think that shaped your decision to go develop new technology as the true code, really to also give voice and give a face, give identity to the smallholder farmers, right?
Yes, also that, and you get, it's very humbling, right? If you travel a lot, that you always think when you see those children with their little hands peeling mandarins, skins from mandarins, that you think I could have been there, and that is really has changed. It has decided. Let me decide to set up SIM to get at least a track and trace. And we will talk about the true code and farmers today, because there's a lot of things that we still have to solve step by step.
Yes, Bianca just let me know that our poll doesn't work. I hope it works later. But thanks for the great introduction. I would like to then go to our topic today of what is true code.
Okay, do you allow me to share a presentation, please? Because I think that always helps in leading and making sure that you keep track on what you share with the audience. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Good. So I call this also the democratization step by step. You heard me say it, and as Dick Veerman also knows, I really, really mean it. You can only eat an elephant bite by bite. That's what an American told me, and that's with all big topics that require systemic change. It's never a click on a button. So what we try to achieve with the True Code is a step-by-step approach towards democratization of data. And Rudy and I joke a lot about this, but because if you keep doing what you always did, you get what you always got. And we have to repeat this every now and then, because if you want to require or want to achieve systemic change, there are also many people who do not like to change. Change is not into everybody's scope, I would say it like that. So step by step. So maybe just to give you a short introduction about the True Code. And it's an initiative that was started by the Consumer Goods Forum, that is Rudy is representing, and he can kick in later, and SIM. SIM is a member of the Consumer Goods Forum. And for those who don't know, the Consumer Goods Forum is the branch representations of all the leading retailers and the leading brands in the world. So Unilever, Nestle, but also Walmart, Ahold, Carrefour, all the big retailers, the big brands are coming together in the CGF, and it's CEO-led. So it's really the leaders coming together to try to create systemic change. And SIM is a member, and within the Consumer Goods Forum, you have a working stream called End-to-End Value Chain, where Rudy is the director. And in this work stream, where SIM is also having a stake, we got a lot of feedback from retailers and brands that are under huge pressure of consumer organizations and NGOs. And the push that they got was about deforestation, was about slave labor, was about human rights, that in a lot of cases are related to the first part of the supply chain, so the smallholder farmers. And they want to answer those, to give answers to those pressure that's coming towards them. And they say, well, we need trusted answers. So we need assured verification. And as with SIM, we were already mapping hundreds and thousands of supply chains. Of course, they also looked at us to say, can you not help us to solve this huge challenge that we have to actually have data also coming from the first mile? And their dream is that data travels with the product. Because many of the supply chains are volatile, and I mean, it's relatively easy to have a vertical integrated supply chain. It costs, of course, time, money, energy, but it's possible. But many supply chains, like fruit and vegetables, are not easy to vertical integrate, because in week 1 to week 10, you receive it from this supplier from this country. And then from week 10 to week 15, it's constantly changing. And actually, the answers of the consumer about a mango, where it comes from, were the working circumstances okay, was the environment not polluted by it? It doesn't matter where it comes from. The data should be there. The answer should be there. So when we set up the pilot, we had to keep this in mind. And what we learned in all these years with all this huge amount of data is if you don't respect data quality, you get mess. Because when you look at retailers have buyers. Buyers are the one that negotiate with the suppliers. And if the data is not correct, you are in trouble. So data quality is important. And when CGF and SIM started to work on this, we said, okay, when we want data traveling with the product, when we want data from the first mile, including the smallholder farmers, we need one unique identification that it could be on top of others, but in order to understand which facility played a role in a product supplied to us, they need to be identified and it needs to be unique. So the consumer, and we can read that everywhere on the internet. You everywhere where you see type in sustainability and consumer, you find reports that underline that there is a growing amount of consumers that want to buy sustainable products. So in order for retailers and brands to do that, what do they need? Well, they need facts that can be trusted, and the facts should be related to the products that they consume, because that is where the question is going to. If I eat this piece of meat, how am I sure that the soy fed to the animals is not coming from areas that have been deforested for that? And if you think that is far-fetched, then talk to the retailers, because they are in our working groups of the True Code. And these are actually the questions that they receive from consumers and from consumer organizations. So it goes as far as the soy having been fed to the pigs that end up of a plate of a consumer. So they, in order for a retailer to answer that requirement, they need story. Also, more and more retailers and brands want to share impact stories. This is what I, as a retailer, did to make the lives of these people or this environmental issue like water. This is what I did together with the supplier to make it better. Well, the only way you can do that if you have the trusted fact. And I mentioned already deforestation, but also human rights, child labor. They are often in the first mile of the supply chain, and often the smallholder farmer is involved. So let me share one practical example with you, and then I introduce the True Code and the role that it can play. So a retailer, and I work with them, they are very serious in making a positive impact. And they decided that they want to have a specialty range of coffee with coffee that can be linked back to a washing station in Rwanda. They are thinking about a premium, but then they also want to be absolutely sure that the premium ends up in the pockets of the individual farmers and not in the pockets of the cooperative, which is often the case. And it doesn't mean that a cooperative is not not sharing their premium with the farmers. But if you don't have the facts, you don't have the proof. And that is a very strong signal because they want to communicate about that. And what is happening, for those of you who live in Holland, you have seen that NGOs travel to the areas where retailers make a claim and investigate if the claim that they make is really true. And if it's not, then they use the blame and shame or name and shame to express that. So in this case, in Rwanda, the farmers were on the list, but the cooperative actually said, yeah, we have this list, but actually the data quality is really bad. You have to know that in Rwanda, it's a cash economy, and 50% of the smallholder farmers are illiterate, do not have a bank account, and cannot do anything else than work with cash. So we need actually, this retailer also needs the data of that individual farm, not only to prove that if they give a cash that it ends up in the right pocket, that it's really spread, but also to tell the story to the consumers that their coffee really comes from that locations. And when they make a claim about smallholder farmers, where they have a positive impact on, it better be true. So that brings me to the True Code and how 2 years ago, Rudy and the steering committee of the end-to-end value chain say, okay, we need something to solve it. So an identification of location, including smallholder, is a challenge. But what is the actual situation? So Rudy and I first started to look at what is already out there. Is there already a, let's say, global solution? And we found out that there was none. You have the global location number, you have the blue number. There are many initiatives, but actually a widespread one we couldn't find. And also when you look at costs for creating a number, sometimes it's around 400 euros. And when I go back to the Rwanda example, the smallholder farmers earn $150 a year. So 400 euros for a number is a no-brainer. And what we also learned is that, and that's also within our SIM experience, that there is this power game played, especially by traders in the middle, that have the data of the smallholder farmers, so it's the cooperatives or the traders, but they are not willing to share it. They want to protect that data because they are afraid that the customer will source without them. So they are reluctant to release the data that the retailers actually need to do that storytelling. So when you look at the challenge of having the data, even if retailers are investing heavily in a software solution or IT solutions, it is a very expensive process for them. And it's expensive, and for supplier, it's a burden because they have to enter the same data in many of the repositories, so many of the databases the different retailers work with. So how did we, in the due course of 1.5 years, try to address this? Well, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. There are many repositories. I saw that Nico is also here with his solution, which also contains a lot of data. When you take Global Gap as a beautiful example, I mean, they play a leading role in the primary production. They have a beautiful software solution, a database with very valuable information. They have their own IDs. Well, it is relatively easy to add on top of their existing ones another ID, and allow them to stay with their own data, keep their own data, but connect to a network. And for those of you who know me a little bit, we have been exploring successfully with our retail clients the distributed ledger and blockchain and the technology under it. And we learned that it is possible for those traders and cooperatives in the middle that do not want to share all the private details, that this technology allows perfectly to support locking the private details away and only sharing the private fields with the one that you decide to share it with. So we, in the due course of time, we said, okay, we have to, if we build something, let's build it in a distributed way. And because if you then have the data that, for example, sits in the solution of Nico or the solution of that Christian has to offer, then it can stay there. But you can connect and you can allow interrogation of that data. And Tiffany, I want to stop here because I don't want to make it too technical. But I want to explain the principle. And we're now almost 2 years in progress. And we have been successfully delivering the MVPs, the minimum viable products. We're in the middle of delivering the third version of the MVP. And to give you an idea, Tiffany, who's involved and people who are listening, it's retailers, but also service providers or service companies like McDonald's, food service, that need those answers. And we also are very lucky that Fion, Bert Eurlings, and the slaughterhouses, the farmers, the feed mills, and the largest trader of soy, Civitra, is also involved in this minimum viable product in phase 3, allowing retailers and brands to get more transparency in their supply chain. And Vion is so kind to share their supply chain with true code numbers to this minimum viable product, allowing people to test how this could work and how this could look like.
Well, thank you, Marjan. I think the concept and we've been covered in our series are also quite new to the agri-food world. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions, and I hope we can get to the question from the panelists, our respondent, and also our audience later in the session. Our poll is out to work, so I'd like to actually go back to a little bit understanding our beginning. So I will launch the poll right now to get the first question. Just simply, where are you from? Are you based? Oh, since I'm launching, so normally we'll let the people fill in and we talk, but then it only works with my screen now, so I'll wait a little bit. I think I'll let everybody answer, and then we can also show the next result. Okay, so mostly Europe. And we have, well, I see it. I already show it. Right, that's the result. Mostly our audience from Europe, and then we have a quite good representation from Africa, which is very good because our next talk, the number 4 in the series, will be focusing on Africa. It's pre-announcement. Oh, sorry, I have to share the result. Yeah, that's the result. And then the second question, how do I, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, second question is, we talked a lot about smallholder farmers, and this is in some ways a trick question. If you saw, to check if you will read my LinkedIn post, how many smallholder farmers are there in the world? Definition of smallholder farmers, typically farm managed by one family. So they are for subsistence or also sometimes for cash crops. Oh. Again, I'm not I didn't launch yet. Sorry, that's my mistake. Just launched the question. How many smallholders are there in the world? Hesitation? Okay, so 80% people answered. And that's the result. 50% got it right. So the correct answer is 500 million smallholder farmers worldwide, and mostly in Asia and Africa. And they provide food needed for 2 billion people. That's quite a large number. And according to Marjan, most of them, I think a very, very small percentage of the smallholder farmers are certified, so they're identifiable. So when we talk about, let's say, the market for true code, we're talking about 500 million. Of course, can also be used by other facilities. But for smallholder farmers, that's a much needed, valuable service. And then as we are talking about the cases, I like to use the poll question to get already two actually real cases happening today, right now. So the first one is this Dutch chocolate brand. Since most of you are from Holland, from Europe, you know this brand, Tony Chocolonely. It's a well-liked brand because I shall buy it a lot because it also has a very strong ethical social standing. But today, just news is it was removed from the ethical list by an American NGO called the Slave Free. And then because it's linked to Barry Callebaut, because this multinational do have cocoa beans that's with the origin with using associated with child labor. That's Marjan just talking about modern slavery and child labor. According to Tony Chocolonely, though, that they say their beans are 100% traceable because even though they source from this Belgian multinational, but their beans are separately processed. So their beans are 100% traceable. But as a consumer, as the NGO still decided because it's linked, that it's it's not worthy to be on the ethical list. So the question is, what do you think about this? Really a debate? Is it? So I'm waiting for the voting to come in. The third question is, I don't buy the brand anyway because I might buy it or don't buy it, but not because of its social standing. So anyway, it doesn't have an effect. We'll wait for most people answered it. Okay, I'll end the poll. Most is interesting because actually has no impact on the people who currently, I assume, do buy, have no impact because I think people believe that anyway it's impossible to be 100% ethical. So do you agree with that, Marjan, on this?
Yeah, what I because it was big in the news and for those who are in those topics like me, we knew this. And you have if you follow Tony Chocolonely, which is really a hero in a way that they opened the discussion, they changed from slave-free to on the way to slave-free. And the issue is, again, the complexity of the supply chain, but also the fact that you have the cooperative, and there you have the smallholder farmers. And it's very difficult to identify those smallholder farmers. And we know that for the steps to come, the True Code could step in and because they have an existing solution, so it could be easily added. But it's no such thing than to solve the slave labor, is a systemic issue of slave labor in chocolate overnight. But identifying the individual farmer is a very important starting point, Tiffany.
But this discussion, Truco is not yet, for example, discussing with Tony Chocoloni of other multinational that's really the key player in the sourcing process.
No, because we are in a pilot phase. Now it's meat and the meat-related issues. For the next phase, where we're going from March to September, it will be focusing on coffee, soy, and bananas. So, we take it step by step and if it could work for coffee, then it could potentially also work for other commodities like coca. So it's still in the pilot phase, Tiffany.
Thank you. So our audience, you already see that there's the last poll question in your screen. So 50% people voted away a little bit. There's also brand new news, hot off the press, that Rabobank just named Barbara behind me as the new CEO for Rabobank Carbon Bank. And this bank is not dealing with finance in money, but in carbon credit. So it allows basically large corporations, mostly then in the West, in the developed countries, to buy carbon offset credits from smallholder farmers. The question is, what do you think about this? Is it great? Because I think that's the intent for setting up this carbon bank, is to help the small farmers. And it's good for environment, right? Because then you can preserve the Amazon forest. The second question is quite a challenge because, like Marjan just said, it's quite difficult and quite challenged to, despite the good intent, but to actually make sure the money really go into the hands of the smallholder farmers. And the last one is you simply don't agree because you don't think that there should be carbon trading in the first place. We have quite a good number of people voted already. I will show the results. So you can see that rather surprisingly, I wonder, it's a result we can share with Rabobank, Dick, that quite rather low percentage of our audience really actually think this is a good idea for smallholder farmers and for the environment. Surprisingly low, actually. So 50% of people don't believe there should be such trading schemes. And then a quite large percentage indeed don't find it quite a challenge to have the money go into smallholder farmers. This is what you also believe, right, Marjan? That's number 2. Yeah,
and that's also a very deep motivation. I mean, Rudy is also here on the call. Without identifying the smallholder farmers, a change in value distribution can never take place. So if you look at the whole issue of carbon credits and the initiative of Rabobank, and Rabobank is a strategic partner of ImpactBuying, until now, the deal is done with a cooperative. So a cooperative that represents a certain amount of farmers, smallholder farmers. And the deal is done with the cooperative, the money is paid to the cooperative. And if the money is generated over the number of hectares that the smallholders are farming on, and the actual value that is connected to the work that they do not end up in their pockets because there is not data beyond the cooperative, the change in value distribution cannot take place. And I think the Rabobank is aware of that. So that's why they are a partner of us. That's why they are investing in the True Code, because they know they need a solution to stay credible. And that, I think, is a real good thing, Tiffany. And that is not something that Rudy and I saw when we started to talk about the True Code.
Already see some question from the audience. We'll come to that. We'll have a good amount of time for audience discussion. I would like to ask our respondent, start with Christian Miller, president of Global Gap. Christian, during our launch talk, we talked about harmonization and convergence of certifications, also the unique identifier issue. And Global Gap has a farm ID system, which you discussed, also try to address this traceability identification issue. So I would like to hear your comments in response to True Code. How do you see this True Code and farm ID can play together?
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany. Also, again, thank you, Dick, for co-organizing this. And Marjan, as always, very good presentation and demonstrating what you're doing. First of all, I think it's a major big undertaking, and I fully align with the underlying reasons, the motivation players behind to drive this. Yeah, we've been talking since 25 plus years in this industry. We know it's necessary, and these are the biggest sort of challenges we've got to come about. And it's always good that we have different tries and moving this forward. Smallholders in the center is, because of the pure number and the impact, very important. Now, and also looking at those ones like coffee and I think in soy is critical. I was wondering, I think that I also agree as much with the costs. I would challenge that. I mean, there are other opportunities that doesn't need to be, the free costs. I mean, also our numbers, even though we work with GS1, our number is only a few cents. So the number per smallholder, this is not a price that can be negotiated. It's not a few hundred. Just want to make sure the pricing may not necessarily be the key thing. But so in general, I think it's great to have alignment as possible. Unique farm ID has already been a topic since 2014. We've been working on the Declaration of Abu Dhabi. I've shared that previously already, also in these talks. So it's all the same motivation. My biggest question I have is how much space is there overall for different number systems or not, right? I mean, everyone likes to be the unique number system, and that is, of course, the Microsoft, but there's always an Apple. There's always some other. There is a Blu-ray, and then there's a different system. So we heard last time the role of data ports, also a project running out of the CGF. And in that discussion says, we can take any number. So the big question I'm having is, which role is there, like for other initiatives like data ports, and does this all work as well if the True Code is not just the only one leading number, but there may be 2, 3, 4, 5 that collaborate?
You allow me to react on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. And also, I'd like to invite Rudy later on. So maybe first, Christian, and we are fighting together on this. So that's really nice, and it's not something you can solve on your own. So we're in a pilot. We're in pilot phase 3. We take it step by step. We don't know if it succeeds. That's something to. But it's if you don't try, the time is now there, and there is a big support of of the retailers and brands who do the buying in the world and who need answers on their questions. So the whole idea is that the concept of the True Code is free, not so, and using existing initiatives like yourselves, with the numbers. Because if you look again at the customer side, so the retailer or brand side, they work with GLNs because their whole system is worked on based on GLN. That's exactly what we try to envision. Please keep working with your own numbers. It's just on top, and some might not use it themselves, but they stick to GLN. Fine, at least by and take the example of Global Gap, by adding the True Code, you become part of the network, and you can allow the companies in your repository to share data if they want to. So step by step. And for the other question, also related to data ports, Rudy, maybe you are the best position to step in. Yeah.
I would like to indeed ask Rudy to comment on the developments which we heard in this series already. Dataport, which is a machine-to-machine language, also supported asked by Consumer Goods Forum. Today we heard the True Code. Please also give your insights on the discussion we just had.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tiffany. I fully agree with everything I heard so far. And of course, we also know the opinions. When we looked into this and saw we had a world in front of us with very well working repositories, and every repository has a unique ID system, our first role, as Marjan said, stick to it, okay? Because it works well. Now, if we want to connect it all, what we needed is a kind of a neutral, we call it a thin layer that actually allows everybody to connect. We need this unique True Code on top in order to find potential doublings. There is the possibility that we have the same farmer maybe in two repositories with two different IDs. And the True Code here helps us to identify that, provide the single code for the system, not for your repository or any repository out there. It also enables you now to use your own code to be found on the network, because it still only finds the one and can also tell, actually, there are two potential codes. The True Code, as it is a free of charge generation, basically also helps all of those which might not yet have a code today. There are still farmers that don't have a code. And then even a couple of cents, in my perspective, are even too much. So here it is for free. Use it, go up, and you are connected. And this is basically where we are using the True Code for. True is an acronym that stands for Technical Resource Uniquely Encoded. And that basically is what it is. It helps us in the layer to identify doublings. It helps us to assign a number where there is no number. And it helps us to connect your repository with your own ID, whatever you use, to come up and be found on the system. If we now make the shift to Dataport, Dataport is a protocol of data exchange. And exactly, I think I wasn't present, but I guess that Hans here also said, yeah, we can take everything. And that is also the position of the Consumer Goods Forum, at least on the area where I'm working on. We need to put the industry always into, if you look on the board of checkers, into a square where there are more options than before and better options. We will not put the industry into a place where there are worse or less options. And we can only offer that. So we will not move the piece. We will have, there's a new square, you have better options and the same options. So the industry needs to move there. If they don't move, we failed in the design. So there needs to start seeing value in it, value creation. That's what we also to provide with both Dataports and the True Code. So Dataport basically says you can do everything you do today, and you can start introducing Dataports because it helps you to get data across, and it can help you automate it later on, which is not so easy today in a kind of this easy world. It's basically every standard that's out there can be packed into the Dataport protocol. It doesn't ask what the data looks like, how it's structured, and that's the beauty of it. It's a very wide kind of tool. It's not even a standard. It's a tool that helps you to get data across. But with TrueCode, and just to close the circle, it's the same approach. You're saying we're not going to impose a number or change the way you're working. We want to enable you to connect to a network. The network has to have some hygiene factors, as Marjan calls it, which is make sure that we really have a unique code in case there are different codes for the same company. And that's the reason why we have this thin layer, which is a true code. You as a repository might never actually use a true code. You can still use your own numbering. But now with the true code help, anybody who has your number of your farmer ID number can go to this network and still find the information and find you as a repository. So that's basically the task of the true code. So it's not it needs to replace existing numbers. It helps to keep the system very clean and working and functioning. So that's the key importance of the true code. But we really, again, we believe the repositories today are very strong because they are well working. They have good ID systems. What we didn't want to do is find 10 repositories, say you have a nice ID, we like it, then 9 others hate us. So that's not a good place to be in, right? So we said, no, wait a minute. This is 2020. The world has changed. You don't need a central hub to generate unique IDs. So there's software that can do that for you, actually. It's open source. And let's go that way. Let's produce that thing. We mostly will use the true code to clean the system. I hope that answers most of your questions.
And I think what is good to come back on the value distribution, right? Because we talked about retailers and brands under pressure that needs a string of verified data from identified sources, because only then they are allowed to do storytelling, and that data has a value. And we know that from the projects that we have with the big retailers on vertical integrating their supply chains, right? To do that, enable that storytelling, but it's not a scalable model. But they are prepared to pay more for a product that has the data versus a product without data. So it will have a monetary value. And in the next phase, we will crack the nut on how we can have that value, if there's good data, going back to the ones who contributed to it. So step by step, but that is on our agenda to do that. So also coming back on this carbon credit example, where there is a trade-off of the carbon that was created by farmers. How should the true code help to make sure that there is a proof that the value of the data that they delivered to create that carbon credit, also that value ends up in their pockets, step by step?
I think with this concept we're discussing, indeed, we are trying to actually bring this digital transformation to a quite very fragmented global agri-food system. So how the system really work with each other, we also need real cases. So here I would like to bring in Dr. Ikeshi, because during the discussion about the Rabobank carbon bank, one topic is say, well, the carbon bank was created because it should be good for small farmers. But the question is, have the small farmers been consulted? So here I'd like to ask Dr. Ikeshi, because a lot of our discussion today and the benefit and the problems are in Africa, in developing countries. So, and also like to introduce Dr. Ikeshi as our speaker for our next session, because on the 4th installment of the Digital Food Series, which is in 2 weeks, we'll focus on agriculture, horticulture, knowledge exchanges, and also the value of creating transparency in Africa with farmers. But here I would like to ask you to give your feedback and comment about what you heard today.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, and the rest of the organizers of this epoch-making startup event. I must say that I'm very much fascinated with the session ongoing. Yes, I also wish to recognize Koen and Dick as well. With respect to what I have heard today, and trying to relate it to Africa, I can tell you that Africa has become very interested, and there's so much increasing of awareness and interest of investors, especially in the fourth industrial revolution, when technology is driving the four with respect to agriculture sector transformation. And of course, we all know, I don't know if we are aware that most developing countries are encouraged to develop their agriculture sector, because it has a direct impact on the economy-wide growth. So with respect to smallholder farmers, which they comprise the agriculture sector of Africa and even Asia, and we can see that the challenges are already there. The challenges with respect to the resources needed to for effective and efficient farming system, and also bringing in the knowledge of the principles of marketing, which I saw branding, and I was quite happy with that, because the whole idea of production is that after we have produced, because we know that these items are highly perishable, and they are also seasonal, and they are high value crops, and there's no way that marketing of these commodities will end up being wasted. We know that Africa has diverse seasons. Some areas are experiencing some temperate, and some are also experiencing the tropical aspect. And bringing in the issue of data, now that trying to be sure of data with from the side of the farmers. I don't want to believe that even from the the questions that we answered, they are subjective questions. They are not just, you don't just say that those questions that we, that the responses that we gave are accurate for those that had the highest. It's just like a report of what people's responses are. And also, we also know that this is a socio-economic aspect, is a social science issue. So, and it's, what you will see in Africa, or the response you will see in Africa, may not be the same with respect to the responses that you see, in a country, in a continent like Europe, in most of the developed nations. So, and also in Africa, we have the ECOWAS region, and we have the Eastern African region, and we have the SADC region, which is the Southern African Development Community countries, and even the Northern Africa. But the other areas of Africa, the major part of Africa, which is Sub-Saharan Africa, which is about 54 countries, and then the other part, which is 5 countries. So you can now relate it to the issue on ground, and then I always encourage persons who are talking about Africa, that there is, from the need assessment and from the sessions we've had even in the African Council for Trade, Tourism and Investment, where I am one of the senior advisory board members. We are looking at the trade issues.
Yes, the intra trade within Africa is going to be a very big topic. So in our next session, we will also talk about, with European knowledge and technology in variety development, in data, how can we exchange and learn more, and also to, let's say, helping the food security, transparency, and also smallholder farmer livelihood. So thank you for your response. I would like to we have quite a number of questions from the audience. There's a question from Simona about whether mixed crop farmers that grow different kind of vegetable or fruit, do they always get the same identification number? It's some question for Marjan, I think.
Yeah, Simone, it's bad. And I didn't want to go too much into detail, but we created a data model that is the fundament of the passport, and that addresses the different crops in relationship with the hectares. That is tied to a smallholder farmer, but a farmer in general, or a location in general. Because the one thing I need to clarify, we focus on smallholder farmers, but the identifier is for every location. So could also be a factory that produces clothes. Thank you.
And there's another question from James about how can these measurement tools be used to help with true cost for food products, to also in creating, let's say, real benefit in terms, for example, food waste reduction, when consumers understand the true cost of food.
Yeah. And I have to make a clear cut. It's location-related identification, not product.
Anyone want to jump in? Maybe also for Rudy about this. You just explained the number of questions, development in different kind of measurement tools. Can you maybe help the question on this concept of true cost for food, of food waste topics? I don't know if Rudy's still here. Or maybe Rudy has to step out.
Yeah, he just left the meeting.
Okay. Marjan, do you want to say some things about this question?
That's why I tried to make the clear barrier. The location, why is it so important? Because there was really nothing related, not really something scalable related to that. And a location says something about the circumstances under which a product has been produced. If it's food safety, many of the certifications available are related to the circumstances. So social compliance, food safety, also environment often has a lot to do with what's going on the location. So there's on products, there are many identifiers, GTINs, and we deliberately decided to not go into that, because that is actually what you need to on product identification level to look what's going on with that product in the supply chain, to calculate the true, for example, food waste, food loss. And we are not going into that, but we know it's there. And when it's about the true price, so not the true cost, but the true price of the travel that a product makes through the supply chain, that can help when you know if it's a long chain or a short chain, or that will give one of the indicators that you need to calculate that. But it's only one of them.
I think we already actually at the end of our session, so some people are free to leave, but we will continue to answer some questions coming in. And also like to just thank you for everybody for joining today. And for our next session, I'd like to make a pre-announcement. We'll talk about Africa on horticulture and agriculture, knowledge exchanges and real cases. So then we can continue with some of the questions. One question from Sahid Adams about the roles of intermediaries, like aggregators.
Yeah.
And then because, a lot of smallholder, they still probably belong to or need such intermediaries to help them manage information.
Correct. And they are playing a crucial role. So like the cooperatives or the first buyers, they will be very important. And they are, when it comes to creating a passport, and we are now working on the rules for that, you can't, I talked about that with Christian many times, even in our last call. The certification, the auditor at the ground can do a cross-check if a facility passport was created in the right way, but it's still, you need the intermediary and the cooperative to play a role in that. And we just have to start doing it, find out what's the cheapest and best way with the intermediary to get that data.
Thank you. So another question from Nico here on the left. Question, of course, indeed, Truco is right now, you mentioned at phase 3. Yeah. So it will enter phase 4, that is starting going into real applications, right? Correct. But there's, of course, chance that will fail. So we certainly don't hope it will fail.
No, but
it's
you don't know. You don't know. We it's worth trying. That's what we say. And the end goal should be that the true code is open source and it's owned by everybody and by nobody in the same line. So it's not, we are developing it, the intellectual property is ours, but we will bring it in for the greater good, because this needs to be solved. Otherwise, all these topics of deforestation, of human rights, it's a pity that Tony got bashed because of, they try so hard, they are very open. And the reality is there with everybody. And after decades of trying to make sustainability better, we only end up with more deforestation, more child labor, more. So we need better data. And this is just a hygiene factor to try to solve it.
It'll be a really good discussion, I think, with the discussion, Dick, to follow up with Rabobank, for example, with this carbon trading issue, exactly addressing this smallholder farmers. How do we, with a good intention, to make sure the money really ends up in the hands of small farmers? What are the comments, response from actual small farmers? What their pain points, let's say.
Yeah, and the whole thing we try to do here is the hygiene factor, without giving them their locations they are farming on, a face, identifier. You can try to do financing. You can try to do access to market or marketing. If they are not identified, all those things are not possible.
Yeah.
Ikeshi, like to say a few words about intermediaries. Ikeshi?
Yes, I just wanted to point out something from a research I carried out some years ago. That was in Nigeria. It was actually a southern study, because Nigeria is made up of about 6 geopolitical zones, and northeast, northwest, north central, south, southeast, and southwest. So, but the study was carried out in the southeast Nigeria, and it also cuts across in the northern part, where it's majorly comprised of the Muslim religion, and because most of the studies that we carry out touches on those sociocultural and ethnic and all that, those aspects. So when I carried out the study on horticulture, we discovered that, because it was like a study on off-season marketing. So we discovered that the intermediaries are not just what we think about. There are persons who also play roles within the middle, amongst the middlemen. Sometimes they are called commission men, and they look for, chunk of the profits because they are the ones that link up the producers and the buyers from the southeast. So we discovered all these, and when I got, I was listening to Marjan with what she was proposing, and the other guy, I don't think he's here again. So, and I was happy. Dick had already mentioned to me about that, because those are the challenges that the people that the smallholder farmers and the buyers themselves, there's so much confusion with respect to the margins that they make.
Yes, and it's really a problem, because we did just recently a study on the premiums that were from Fair Trade and Rainforest Alliance, which are very good schemes when you look at the criteria and on the ground. But with the premium, if the cooperative just decides to pay even a lower price than what's on the market, they just do it. So we really have some nuts to crack, because if we think that we do good by paying a little bit more for a product as a Western consumer that really cares, and then the money doesn't end up in the pockets of the farmers, because they don't even get the premium, they don't get the minimum price.
Absolutely.
We all think that they get it, but they don't get it. And we need systemic change. And of course, there will always be corruption. There will always be the power game. But if this becomes a hygiene factor for cooperatives, they can't do business if they have not identified their smallholders, period. Then we have a start to allow also the smallholders access to finance, access to market, because now they don't. It gets stuck with the cooperative. And that's also the unlucky burden that where Tony Chocolonely is going through. It's not that they don't have the good intentions. It's not that they don't try, but this hygiene factor is not there. And there is you have the coca bot. You have
exactly
that step by step.
Yeah, I'm sorry to also when they can also encourage. Like you mentioned about cooperative farming, I know that, people are running away from joining cooperatives in Africa because of you just gather money, people just gather their resources, and then someone just ends up taking it away. But now, because of the welcoming interest, the awareness has been created that when smallholder farmers, when they form cooperatives, they will have easy access to interventions. When these middlemen are playing their roles, and most of them like during what do you call it, SAS protests, when there are religious crises, some middlemen also make a whole lot of profit. So they enjoy such situations when they will close borders, so there won't be easy supply of food items. Of course, food security will, which will lead to high costs of food, high costs of those commodities that had easy flow of transportation. So, these are the issues that we face, among other issues, which are very, touches on affecting the margins that the farmers make. And of course, what will happen? People will run away from agriculture to practice agriculture because of that.
Yeah, and what we hope to achieve with this, and again, I don't know if we succeed, but is that the big retailers and the big brands, they have an enormous say, and they represent at least the Western consumer who need answers. And if they will come forward and say, this is the hygiene factor that needs to be implemented, otherwise you can't supply me, then we are getting somewhere. Because then we have like the minimum layer where we can build other things on top of it, on value. If they are prepared to pay more money, okay, data is the new gold. So yes. the smallholder farmer, the data that he has is the data the consumers need. So it's a new gold. And how can we get it to them? Well, by first having the hygiene factor installed, and that they are
food safety.
Food, yes. Yeah.
Also, the issue with when you have an infrastructure, indeed, you can also build on other services like financing. This is also a question from Tabang about the access to financing for smallholder farmers. And there's a lot of development in that area, combining with traceability, with digital identity, and also, for example, microcredit or financing, decentralized financing. I think that's a lot of topic we will try to cover in our coming future sessions. Dick, do you want to step in?
Yes, to step in and step out.
Yes.
Because we're way beyond, we're 20 minutes late now, but this is the discussion we need to have. We're already doing business. In a way, it is about issuing. Do we accept the true code as our global state, issuing passports or not? That was, in fact, that's an answer to Christian's question. Is there one or will there be several? Well, some people carry several passports, but it's about, do we accept a no body to issue passports and to emancipate people, to emancipate real smallholders, smallholders, because otherwise the middleman will end up with the money, Ikechi, as you're saying. And that is indeed, we're almost doing business here. I mean, we're sitting here with the Consumer Goods Forum, with Marjan, with all of the big retailers, and we could go bananas, for example.
Let's go bananas.
Or a coffee. And that is, I think, this phase of this discussion, this is what we should take to a next level. And that's what we'll do, talking about Blooming Africa, Digital Africa, in the next talk. Thank you.
Yes.
So this is...
Thank you.
I wanted to round it up, Tiffany.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, we are not addressing easy topics, but the ones who can piece all these puzzles together will be leading the new economy. That's what we believe. So thank you very much. And then see you in our next session, Digital Africa.